Hi. You may have noticed in the world's media today that a new princess has been born into the royal family of the United Kingdom. And I know that YouTube videos only have a 20-minute time span, so I just thought it might be kind of interesting just to look at the chart of the princess. We haven't got a name yet, but we do have the astrology, so because the time of birth has been announced as well as the date, obviously. So here's her chart. And looking at this, oh, by the way, this environment is my online astrology course environment. So if you ever want to kind of learn with me, this is what the environment would look like. So now, when you look at the chart, straight away you can see that she was born with the sun in Taurus and the moon in Libra down here, and she has a Cancer ascendant. The Cancer ascendant suggests that when she was born, she could detect her mum's vulnerability, which sets up a kind of a psychological habit, as it were, an unconscious dynamic of being sensitive to the vulnerabilities of people she meets through life, which can obviously imply that when she meets people, she'll kind of seem soft and caring. And a lot of people will kind of warm to her and get a sort of a sense almost that she seems vaguely familiar from somewhere, which is quite a pleasant trait to have. Now, there are some interesting things in here, obviously. It would take many, many hours to walk through all of this, so we've got to be really brief. The sun in Taurus is an interesting thing. People with the sun in Taurus, their world can revolve around nature and the earth and enjoying the natural world, but also enjoying sentient experience as well. And some people with sun in Taurus go along a slightly slim path, and other people with sun in Taurus go along a slightly different path. And her sun in Taurus just also happens to be square Jupiter, the planet of expansion. Let's see where this is going. Now, a quick look at the sixth house for mind and body relationship. And she's got Scorpio there, which suggests an intense, focused notion of dealing with her body. So she could take health, if she takes health seriously, then she'll be really focused and determined with it. Very strong-willed lady in that respect. She's got the part of fortune in here in Sagittarius, which suggests that she would enjoy taking care of her nutrition, enjoy kind of being healthy and things like this. But then there's Saturn there. Now, in one sense, Saturn can represent that she would have a sort of a sense of duty or guilt around kind of health issues and things like, she should take care of herself and she should exercise and she should do And of course, whenever people live from their shoulds, there's always a sense of resentment that goes along with it, because what makes us happy is doing what we want to do rather than what we should do. So she could find the whole issue of managing kind of a mind-body relationship in terms of diet, nutrition, exercise and things rather tricky. And you see, if you put that bit with the other bit, yes. One thing, she could have problems with her bones or skin, so kind of arthritic things, feeling the cold in her hands in the winter, stuff like that. Mittens, this is a princess who will need mittens. Now, one thing that's rather pleasant is that she has moon in Libra in the fifth house, which suggests that in the first 3 years of life, life will seem fair and harmonious, which is really pleasant. That's such a nice beginning, You can imagine having the first 3 years of your life in a beautiful Buddhist temple where everything's serene. That's really nice? And her moon's in the fifth house, so she will get the impression that she is the center of the universe. This picture at the beginning that you saw? This is not like the template picture of the course, and there's the sun, this massive explosion of helium going on with our planet Earth kind of revolving around it. Well, that's how she's going to feel in the first 3 years of life. With the moon in the fifth, she will be the center of the universe and everything will revolve around her. And her brain will go, aha, got it. I am the center of the universe. And then, of course, later on when she's in kind of, early peer group dynamics at school and things like this, she'll find that she isn't the center of the universe, but she'll want to be at the center of the universe unconsciously. So you might find her kind of acting or behaving in ways which seem attention gathering. We'll put it like that. Yes, a paradox will ensue. She feels self-conscious if people are looking at her in a spotlight. She won't like that at all. But at the same time, she'll hate being ignored. Oh, yeah, she will not like being ignored. So how do you balance that? How do you balance a sense of being self-conscious and yet not being ignored either? So we've got to look at her without looking away and look away without looking at her. Now, there are a couple of difficult things here. As a general rule of thumb, children born with the moon in air sign kind of learn in the first 3 years of life that space is normal. And by space, I mean non-tactile kind of space. So she could form the impression that there isn't that much tactile stuff around and that that's okay, which means that later on in life, she can have an emotional need for space and freedom. And this is kind of backed up or supported by the fact that the moon is opposing on the opposite side of the world to Uranus. You see this kind of dynamic here. So there's the princess born in the middle, and the moon's on one side of the earth, and Uranus is on the other side of the earth. Now, this suggests that she could have had, or she'll have, moments in the first 3 years of life in which she is kind of detached from her mum in some way. Now, I've got no way of knowing in what way that is. It could be that mum is off doing duties, right? So she's left with a nanny or something like this, and mum's not around. Conclusion, right, you spend 9 months getting me here, and now you're not around. Or it could imply that mum is physically present, but sort of mentally off somewhere. In which case, the same conclusion. You spend 9 months getting me here, and now you're not around, in a kind of a connection way, emotional connection. So she can have a sort of a sense that there's like an isolationism and a bit of an alienation as well. And so as she grows up, she'll have this emotional need for independence, an emotional need for space and freedom. That's brilliant, you might say. However, what happens if a person has an emotional need for space and freedom in their unconscious, but later on in life have a conscious desire for close union and relationship? Now, how can you get I want freedom with I want to be connected in the same thing? So that could mean that there are underlying unconscious dynamics that draw towards her people who would relate romantically in possibly non-conventional ways, and she might find getting commitment out of people a bit tricky, when really, in fact, it's her own stuff that's kind of driving that. Now, something slightly more tricky is that when she was born, the moon is square Pluto. You see this square symbol in the grid here. Or in other words, there's Pluto in the chart, and there's the moon in the chart, and there's Pluto up there. This suggests that she could have a kind of a sense of abandonment. Now, I don't mean she's going to be dumped in a forest, right? What I mean is, you know that like time appears to speed up as we get older. So, you know, when you're a kid, it seems like the gap between Christmas Day and New Year's Day lasts like about a month, right? But now you say, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's like 4 seconds in between. But when we're children, there's this languishing time in between the two. So we know that as we get older, because of our relationship with time and space changes, therefore our kind of concept of time seems different. Now, if you rewind that all the way back to when someone's, you know, 2 minutes old, if they're kind of put to one side while mum's being attended to even for, say, 1 minute, that's half your lifespan if you're 2 minutes old. That's a long time. So relatively, she could have the experience that, for whatever reason, that someone else other than mum is attending to her, a doctor or a midwife, this kind of thing. And because she'll know that it's not mum, it will switch on like a primary defense mechanism. You know, the instinct that lets a rabbit know there's a fire in the forest, or you know, you can smell thunder on the wind. That primal instinct that we all have inside us. Well, some of the experiences that she has between 0 and 3 will kind of switch that on. It might be possible that she has some kind of near-death experience. That's a possibility. It might be possible that she has the fear of death, i.e. if I'm left to alone or abandoned, or I'm having to trust these strangers, then how safe am I? Whatever it is that switches on this defense mechanism, it means that from then on, unconsciously, she'll kind of have a very strong desire for privacy, wanting to know about the world, being deeply curious about other people, but really disliking it when people know about her. Now, can you imagine what it would be like to be a soul that's going to incarnate into a goldfish bowl? And the moon in the 5th house, as we've already found, has an emotional need for acknowledgement and to be in the spotlight. But the moon also has, or unconscious also has, an emotional need to be private as well. How can you reconcile those two things? How can you be in a spotlight on the one hand, but private and concealed in your own private space without the world looking at you on the other? Now, one thing, if you look up here, she's got Moon in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini, and Venus in Gemini too. This little girl will be a highly intelligent lady with an above-average intellect, which is brilliant. However, as well as having a very clear sense of cognition, and possibly an aptitude for languages as well, she'll also be very daydreamy. She'll have experiences between 3 and 14 which prompt her to kind of retreat into her imaginary world a little bit. So she might fall in love with poetry or music or dance and things like this, things that kind of take you out of I guess the harshness and the clatter of life. She'll find the education rather difficult to begin with. She'll feel pressured to do well. Whether she does well or not is another thing, and whether that pressure is from a teacher, from a parent, or just merely from herself, she'll kind of feel slightly inhibited by a need to do well, which in some children produces an impetus to kind of meet the challenge, and in other children produces this kind of desire to back off, so it's like if you don't run the race, you can't be seen to lose. But there's something else as well. The Mercury is square Neptune, so there's Mercury, and Neptune is over here. Now, Mercury is in the 12th house in Gemini, which means that the drifty, daydreamy kind of things that she finds herself retreating into in between from the age of 3 kind of teach her forming cognition to be able to kind of function in a slightly right brain or numinous way. This is suggested in the chart by the fact that the Mercury is in the 12th. It's also suggested in the chart by the fact that Gemini is in the 12th. And it's also suggested in the chart by the fact that Mercury is square Neptune. So there's kind of an indication here, or an implication, that she could have slight dyslexic tendencies. Which, I'm dyslexic, it's perfectly fine. And all it means, really, is that the structure of the left brain, or kind of the style of thinking, if you like, tends to kind of function in a right brain way. So she'll have a very vivid imagination. She'll be able to, with her inner vision, she'll literally be able to visualize an object and rotate it, in her mind's eye. Fantastic. She'll be great for design. She could be very, very good at writing, especially stories, poetry, music, dance, the arts, really. Venus in the 12th is just kind of wired for artistic expression, especially if it's not necessarily kind of visual art, but the other kind of arts like dance and music and poetry and things like this. She could have a real flair for things like that, and that's cool. She'll love writing, she'll love language, she'll love kind of learning and chatter. Her adolescent years could be fairly stable and consistent. That's quite nice. Jupiter in the 3rd suggests that she'll probably go to university. Bound to go to university, I would have thought, and continue learning on from that as well. She'll have the, although she's very bright, one of the kind of downsides of being really bright is that she could also have this sense that she doesn't know enough, even though she does. So it will seem to her that no matter how much she learns, she'll always feel as though she doesn't know enough, and so that turns her almost into a perpetual student, and she'll keep kind of learning through most of her life. The moon in the 5th suggests she'll make a natural mum. That's nice. However, there are some however's. Yeah, while her romantic life might be interesting, her marriage life, her committed relationships, could be rather tricky. With Capricorn there and Pluto in the 7th, these both kind of suggest some quite hard dynamics to have to deal with, especially issues around guilt and feeling that one is obliged to be with someone or continue going out with someone even if it becomes lackluster. She'll find that she really doesn't like the idea of anyone telling her what to do in any way, shape or form. Who don't? Well, some people do, actually. So she'll be incredibly defensive about letting anybody in. And that could mean that she's, and that's good, right? Having an immune system is good, right? It's much better than AIDS. So being fussy, being pedant, being discerning is very, very good indeed. However, bringing down the blinds and the shutters and erecting a Berlin Wall and a Great Wall of China and glass plates as well on top of that, one can sometimes find that the defensive walls are so strong and so big that they don't let anyone in at all, which, while that might protect one from pain in relationships, it doesn't necessarily protect one from the pain of loneliness. So the ability to discern character would be a beneficial thing for her to do, which might mean that she instinctively senses this, and she might kind of start to want to look at, you know, what makes people tick? How do you know what's going on? And if she kind of starts looking at psychology as a topic, she could have a real aptitude for that, especially relationship dynamics. You know, so it depends what one does with these particular things. But yeah, she could be a real kind of instinctive, intuitive psychologist. Neptune in the 10th suggests she could, oh, that's nice. She could be kind of something iconic for the world. If you want some astrological comparisons of that, think Marilyn Monroe, think Princess Diana. She has Uranus in Aries in the 11th. This is someone, because of her emotional need for fairness and justice, she'll fight with herself about her own, the ideology of her own position. You know, she's born into a situation where resources will never be an issue, or at least on the current political, social trajectory. And yet at the same time, with Uranus in the 11th, she'll feel as if she wants to champion causes, champion people. She will not like hypocrisy. She'll find that very difficult to deal with, and she'll bump into a lot of it, just by virtue of the fact that she's in societies with human beings. Wherever you find human beings, you find paradox, and she'll find that kind of paradox very difficult to deal with. So she could end up being rebellious. She could end up championing causes, and she'll be quite vocal. If there's an issue or a pocket of people that she feels are being unfairly treated, she'll speak up. She'll be quite vocal about it, which I think is quite cool. However, there's all this other stuff that she has to contend with as well. Now, I know that YouTube videos have to be quite short, so I'm not sure exactly how long we've been going, but I'll just leave this here and say, yeah, well, there you go. A little snippet, a little vignette of this new person that's landed on planet Earth. The reason for doing this, of course, is that the birth time of her is announced. So that means we know that the chart is absolutely accurate, and also her life will be in a goldfish bowl of media attention. So that means you can then watch the person grow and compare what we expect from the chart to the person's life, and therefore that will let you know whether or not there's any kind of validity in this astrological stuff. It's a fine and ancient art. It's been around a long time. It's worth looking at in more detail. If you want to know more about the courses and things I run, the website is www.davidrowan.co.uk. You can find a contact email on there and write to me. Happy to kind of answer questions and things. And anyway, I'm going to sign off here so that the YouTube people will accept the length of this video time. So take care. Thank you very much indeed for enjoying this, and I'll let the same music play us out. Okay, thank you. See you soon. Bye.